The story that I have chosen for you today comes from Daniel chapter 3. And it's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and the fiery furnace, okay? And so Nebuchadnezzar was king of Babylon. And he became quite full of himself. And as a way to celebrate his successful encounters and as a way to prove his power, he had this large image of gold constructed. And this thing was 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. And at the consecration of this large statue, he gathered all of his governors and all of his royal advisors together. And they said, O king, this is wonderful. And the herald proclaimed that as the harp and the lyre and the trumpets played, that all of the people would bow down and worship this image of gold, because they would honor the king as they did. And so the people were called together and assembled, and the trumpet began to play, and the harp and the lyre, and all of the royal musicians played, and all of the people upon command bowed down, and they worshiped this 90-foot tall image of gold, except for a few young Jews. 3 of them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to bow. And so the king's astrologers came to him and they said, O king, you are so mighty and great. And all of the people have honored you by worshiping your image. But we have unfortunate news. There are some of your Jewish subjects that have refused to bow. Well, the king was furious, and as he shook with rage, and as the red boiled up inside of him, and it looked like his head was going to explode, he said, Who are these young men? Bring them to me. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood before King Nebuchadnezzar. And the king looked at them, and they said, Oh, young men, please tell me this is not so. I've placed you in positions of power because of your integrity and because of your loyalty. And it's unfortunate that you will not bow. And so, because I like you, we'll give you another chance. The harps will play, the lyre will play, the trumpets will sound, and you, along with everyone else, will bow and honor me as king, because I am all-powerful, I am almighty. Or you'll be thrown into the fiery furnace. And what God could save you then? Well, the 3 young men humbly stood before the king, and they said, O king, we cannot bow before your image. See, we serve the God Yahweh, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And he has told us, the king, that we can have no other gods before him. And so rather than dishonor our God, we would choose to dishonor you. And so our God is able to deliver us from the hand of the fiery furnace. But even if he chooses not to, we still cannot bow. The king was enraged with anger, and he ordered the furnace to be heated up 7 times to its normal temperature. And he commanded his strongest soldiers to bind the young men. And as they tied them up so they could not move, he told them, Take them to the furnace. They trekked up the small mountain to the furnace. And the soldiers, as they began to throw the young men in, the flames were so hot that the soldiers were overcome, and it killed the soldiers that were throwing Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the furnace. And so the 3 young men fell in. Well, down below, the king was situated there, and he fought through the smoke, and he looked through the flames. And he said to one of his advisors, he said, How many men did we throw into the furnace? They said, O king, we threw 3. And he said, I see 4 in the furnace, and one of them is walking around like the son of the gods. And he called into the furnace and he said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, sons of the Most High God, come forth. And out of the fiery furnace stepped the 3 young Jewish boys. And all of the government officials and prefects and astrologers and advisors surrounded Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as they stood before the king. And they inspected them. And not a hair on their head had been singed. Their clothes didn't even smell like smoke. The king was so amazed. He said, What kind of a God can deliver from the fiery furnace? Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Let no one in my entire kingdom speak a word against their God.